Okay, this one's classwork day 3, functions, real world problems. So we're going to go through, we're going to have to write things out and what they mean in everyday language. And so we'll just have to explain what everything is. Sorry, I already found a typo. Do me a favor, and where it says what does P represent, let's change it to a T. And then I want you to take a second and read number 1. All right, so we want to know what T represents in the problem. And T is going to represent our minutes. And what does P of T equal? P of T represents in the problem whatever the total amount that we're looking for is, and that's going to be the sheets of paper left. So now we want to really explain what the -9 and the 100 really represent in the problem. So what does the 9 represent for this problem? We know that it's -9t. The negative number should tell you something. And so for that part, we're going to know that my sheets of paper are going to be decreasing by 9 sheets of paper every minute. I want to make sure you can see it all. Sheets. And what does the 100 represent? The 100 represents the fact that there's 100 sheets of paper in the printer, so your original amount. So your job is to explain what P of 7 means in terms of this problem. And so what that's going to mean is we're going to see how many sheets of paper are left after 7 minutes. Because remember, the number inside the parenthesis represents T, and T is the minutes. Explain what P of T equals 55 means in terms of the problem. Now remember, P of T is going to be the total amount, so that's meaning the 55 is the total amount of whatever's left. So that means after T minutes, because we don't know how many minutes, there are 55 sheets of paper left. Left in the printer. And so we're looking at this problem, and we've talked about domain and range before. Remember, domain goes with your x values, and your range goes with your y values. So for this question, they want to know what's a reasonable domain for this function. So remember, it deals with time, and for our domain, because that's our x value. Do you think that it would be reasonable to have a negative number? Now, it shouldn't really make sense to have any negative numbers for our domains. So we probably then want to start at, sorry, let me change colors. We probably want to start, move it up so you can see my answer, at 0. And do we really think do you think it's reasonable for it to go on forever? I mean, would that make sense in context of the problem? At some point, it is going to stop because eventually we're going to run out of paper to have in our machine. So we need to also look at then the highest place where our paper is going to run out. And so for that part, so we can do 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to, and then we got to figure out, well, at what point does my paper run out? When, like at what time would I not really have any more paper? And so we could do that by doing, well, the total amount of paper we'd have would be 0, and that would equal negative 9t plus 100, and we could solve for x, or t, sorry, t in this case. Because that would mean I'm all out of paper at about 11.1 minutes. So we're going to go all the way up to 11.1. It's repeating, and that would be my domain. So then for my range, my possible y values that I could use, the way that we can figure that out is we can actually take the answers that we just found and substitute them in. And actually, sorry, let me make one change. You could also write your answer with a t. Since t is actually representing our x's in this problem, I could make that a t instead. So reasonable range for this problem then, we know that we're not going to have more than 100 sheets of paper. So that is my absolute max. We can't go over 100 because that's all we started with. But we can try to figure out then what the maximum or the minimum number would be. And so if we're dealing with paper, I mean the minimum amount of paper we're going to have would be 0. And so is less than or equal to y, because that's my smallest number. Remember, we always start with a small and going all the way up to the 100. We're not going to have more than 100 sheets of paper in our machine, and it could go all the way down to having 0. Again, it doesn't make sense to have negative numbers because we wouldn't have a negative amount of paper in our machine. We'll work on that. Again, domain and range can be a little bit tricky. The more that you practice it, the easier it's going to get.